Welcome to a new episode here in the Energy Bridge. Today we have the pleasure to have partners, especially for the next forum that we are having in June, inloop, a specialist in supply chain together with sustainability. So thank you, Lydia and Jenny, for being here. Today we're going to explore how this topic of supply chain is intersection with energy transition. So yeah, welcome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Jenny and Lydia. We always start with the journey, and also we would love to know the journey of inloop, and also the journey of your own self. What did you study? What did you do? And how did you end up working at inloop?
So may I start? Thank you for having us again. And it's a great pleasure to be here with you and to work together with you. So why did we found inloop? Why did we lay the foundation stone for inloop 2022? Because my co-founder and I, we think that supply chains are more than operations. They are like strategic engines.
Mm-hmm.
And we are a supply chain consultancy, a supply chain management consultancy. That means supply chain consultancy focus on supply chain strategy, end-to-end business planning, network optimization, transport, and logistics. And with inloop, we also wanted to merge a different perspective. We also wanted to bring the risk management perspective on the one hand. On the other hand, also the sustainability perspective, which goes often hand in hand with risk management, and also circularity aspects. Maybe to give you a small example, when I talk about end-to-end supply chain project, there is a typical process. It's called SNOP, Sales and Operations Planning. And there you bring together at one table different departments from a company. This is marketing and sales, production, of course, supply chain management and procurement, and in the best case, finance as well. And they decide on a common plan or design of a common plan for the next 12 to 24 months. And what we see there, what's lacking there is often the perspective of risk management. Where does my material come from? What's with the risk management of my suppliers or of my customers? And this is where we try to focus. At inloop, I deal with the sustainability aspects. We want to get our clients resilient and bulletproof supply chain, so to say. I myself studied economics, and I was in the investment and asset management sector before. And I'm very happy to be here with my colleague Jenny today. May you want to say some words about yourself?
Sure. How I ended up at inloop, actually, I did a lot of years of project management before. So I organized, for example, events up to 950,000 visitors per summer.
Wow.
It was a big passion of mine, but there already was this aspect of logistics and planning in there. As a next step, I wanted to focus a little bit more on the innovation side. This is also why I come back later to why I ended up at inloop. The innovation side brought me to a company that's called GrowF. That is, part of it is female founders, and part of it is the Fund F, which is a venture capital fund that invests into startups that are female-led. And this is also where I figured my passion for sustainability and climate tech. Also, in parallel, finished my master in supply chain. And with this, I figured, okay, actually, I want to know more about supply chain industry, because I just saw that it's the backbone of everything, also in the startup sector. And then I found inloop, which is the perfect combination of three of my passions, which is innovation, supply chain, and sustainability. And this is what I can combine here. That's why I ended up at.
Amazing. And you have your background of studying in supply chain management as well.
Yes.
So maybe you can tell us now what is the intersection with supply chain and energy transition.
Supply chain and energy transition. I mean, I don't need to explain that we need energy for a lot of cases. And we see more and more that the demand for energy rises exponentially, whereas the supply does not. It's a very linear supply rise. And this is where we see this huge need for energy. And we always talk about clean energy, but I see it a little bit different. I see it a little bit more holistic. For me, it's not clean energy that's very focused on the carbon reduction, but it should be sustainable energy. And sustainable energy comes, there is more to it. It's about the material you use. It's about labor rights. It's about human rights. It's about manufacturing. It's about delivery, transportation. So there's way more to it. And it's especially about closing this loop. We want to go away from this linear approach towards a circularity. And this is where the supply chain and the energy comes in, because we will not be able to supply the energy demand we have if we don't start closing a loop. And that's exactly why we want to focus on it.
That's why the name inloop, right?
Inloop, exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Always to get the whole perspective.
Yes.
And there is no, as you said, no energy transition without, or clean energy transition with a green supply chain.
Yeah.
Because the energy transition is built by component. And without the materials and the components, there is no energy transition at all.
And many of them imported. So it's also how you...
More or less all of them, yeah.
Yeah, it's getting more and more important to have a sovereign Europe with a robust supply chain. So you guys are pretty much in demand. But one thing that stood out also that you have a very nice motto that I was reading. We question everything to get the right answer. So how does that influence your work, and what is also the mission of inloop in the long term?
Maybe you can say that we do not stop at what the clients tell us. So we go beyond the brief. The problem often is, and you know it from your own day-to-day business, that a lot of work is often based on assumptions. So, for example, my suppliers are fine, my demand is stable, the ESG perspective is fine as well. And when you question those topics, you often find that those assumptions are wrong. So maybe when you talk about suppliers, maybe there are single source dependencies, or you have outdated forecasts, for example. You have the false data, so, rubbish in, rubbish out. And often you have a lack in your sustainability as perspective as well. So what does sustainability mean in the supply chain? You have to go, when you talk about your suppliers, you have to go beyond tier one, your direct supplier. You have to go deeper into the supply chain. So you need we always talk about tier N visibility.
Okay.
And there is where we come in. Yeah, so we help to our clients to find out where their problems are, and then we start to focus on them.
So you also measure CO2 footprint, for example, of the whole process of importing or...
Yes, we also look at scope 3 emissions of our clients, of course, because the biggest part of the emissions lie in the scope 3. I think it's more than 70 or 80% of the emissions are in the upstream and downstream supply chains. We ourselves don't measure the CO2 emissions, but we help our clients to bundle, to segment the suppliers. And there we look at those suppliers where the most emissions sit. Our clients have, for example, a few hundred suppliers, and some of them have more than 15,000. So it does not make sense to focus on all of them. So we build segments, and then our clients focus on those segments. And there we come in and help them to do that.
I mean, you were just expanding on that, where you come in for, if you can walk us through a typical example of supply chain health assessment that you go through for a client.
So the health assessment, we normally say, is the first step. That's not the whole process. So Jenny and I always say it's the first medical check-up. So we do not want to treat symptoms. We want to go deeper. So there we make a let's say, a transparency check, maturity check. We look at the organization itself, the organizational setup, the data and tools behind. And then we can see, so sometimes departments work in silos, for examples, and there are interfaces missing. And then we can figure out the pain points, and then we focus on them and go the next steps.
It's kind of like you go to the doctor that then sends you to the specialist, and he detects where you actually need to go. And this is what we basically do in this first health check.
You have another motto that it's more than just a consultancy. What do you mean with that?
Yes, I think we really need to focus here on this hands-on approach. As a consultant, you're often confronted with stereotypes, and for us at inloop, it's very important to say that we don't just take a slide deck that we sell to each customer. For us, it's really important that we truly listen, because every company works differently and every company has their very unique way of functioning. So for us, it's really important to listen, to think through. Also very important, we don't sell software. A lot of consultancies sell a specific software, and we want to know what the best fit for our customer is. So that means we actually constantly screen and map markets to see what is out there, and then with the client together find the best solution for their issue. So it's really a tailor-made approach. And we don't want to just sell the slide deck and say, here's the solution, because often the issue is in the implementation part. Often businesses know what their problem is. They would also know what the solution is, but they really lack the implementation. It's very difficult to redesign and reframe structures that are built. That means it's very important for us to also always be part of the implementation, to readjust, see where the issues are, and to make sure that what we achieve together actually has a long-term sustainable effect for the company. That's why we also live for this passion. We always say, we make jokes about it, because we say passion is our biggest strength and weakness, because it really makes us good in what we do, but we also want to do it all because we really love what we do. And it's really this problem solving together as a sparring partner with the client that we love in our day-to-day.
Because it's like a tailor-made solution at the end. So what is the most difficult sector that you have worked with?
I really think each supply chain has sometimes the same difficulties, and it's very often related to data quality or to internal governance. I would say.
Yeah, and it's the tier N visibility,
yes,
as we already said. Yeah, most of the companies have lacking transparency.
Coming to your from your passion to our passion, making everything green. So where do you see, especially now the industry, they have added pressure to make their supply chain green as well. So when you come to a manufacturing or a energy company, and they come to you about making their core supply chain green, what exactly it entails, and what does that mean for your project?
For us, everything leads back to this tier N transparency. If you as a company don't know who the supplier of your supplier is, and the supplier of the supplier of your supplier, and etc., until the raw material, you don't know where your your hotspot of CO2 emission is. If you cannot measure, you cannot change. Mm-hmm. So for us, really bringing this tier N transparency in and actually mapping your suppliers, this is where you are firstly able to understand where the CO2 hotspots are. Might it be manufacturing? It really depends on the industry. Some are more manufacturing heavy in CO2 emission. Some is the transportation, because some maybe is not nearshoring, but the transportation ways are very long, very far. So it really depends. Each company is very, very different on that.
The first step is just to look into the entire value chain of where they are sourcing the stuff. But for me, like when I think about a supply chain project, I think of, okay, let's say any company and they need to source a battery. I mean, that's we are talking about these days a lot, and maybe they need to have a smart meter, or they need to what. I sometimes I'm just not able to understand. Let's take it as a layman term. What exactly it entails? That do they need to have it within Europe that makes it green, or they can just actually source it from somewhere else? It's a very layman question, but what does it mean exactly?
If we talk about energy supply chain, we have different struggles. That is very often the type of material we need.
Mm-hmm.
You can often not do the nearshoring. We know that, for example, in Chile, mining is very big. Refining happens in China most of the time. So this is very material bound to certain regions. That makes it very difficult. Then you also have in the energy transition and in the infrastructure very long time. So if you, for example, build up a new mine, it takes up to 15, 20 years that you actually really can make use of this. And also the next step is that as of now, it's getting more and more difficult to actually reach the minerals. That means we now investigate deep sea mining, etc. Or you have cases where we try to mine in Europe, where, for example, you have a town in Sweden that now needs to get reallocated, the entire town, because underneath you have very, very important minerals.
Mm-hmm.
So you just see the very strong dependency, and which also is very linked to geopolitics. If we talk about that, because we are very dependent on countries that have the minerals, we're very dependent on countries that have their refining of the minerals. And this makes it very difficult at the moment. We are in Europe very dependent on a global level. And this is very a big key challenge in the energy supply chain.
Or take a wind turbine as an example, yeah. The energy sector says, I want to reach my climate targets by 2030, by 2040, for example, yeah. And they are investing in renewables. So, but you also have to question, where do my components come from? So, and when we are talking about wind turbines, there are permanent magnets in it. And what do you need for them? You need rare earths. Where do the rare earths come from? They come, more than 80% of them come from Inner Mongolia.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we see there? Radioactive mud, for example, yeah. And people suffer from cancer. The soil, the water is polluted. And maybe we see death of livestock. And why do we need this transparency? Because often, and it's not only in the energy sector, there is supply chains are a black box, and we cannot change anything if we do not have transparency. So everything starts with transparency. I read an article from the inventor of those permanent magnets for the wind turbines. I think it was last weekend. He's a Japanese, and he's aware of the fact that there are rare earths in it. And now he's more than 80 years old, and now he's focusing to implement maybe permanent magnets without those rare earths.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
revolutionary.
But typically also, so there's not just the material transformation that you deal with. There's also the digital transformation and the digital supply chain that you look into. So how does that entail in your work?
For us, digitalization in general is the backbone for the transformation, and we see that in every company. But we are also aware of the fact that it's not the solution for everything. I just mentioned it already earlier, the topic of bad data. We have the problem in many companies that the data is just not available for it. To actually also make use of digital tools.
Mm-hmm.
But for sure, if we talk about transparency and fast reaction to issues, digitalization is the key. You need tools to solve that issue quickly, and you can make so much with it. And even if you look later in, like maybe into AI topics, etc., there's so much playground for it that really helps to improve your supply chain until the limit. So there's a lot of potential you can use. If you don't use digital tools yet, you lack a lot of potential still in your supply chain. So it is really at its core to have digital transformation in there too.
Interesting.
But also use those AI and digital tools in the right way, with the right organizational setup. So this is always the first step. Don't invent the tools, prepare your organization.
And do you find because the energy sector has been the most one of the most orthodox sector to bring transformation, and how do you have any any existing project going on, and how had been the experience?
We have experience in the sector, and we have very good experience, and they are focusing on their supply chains. So they are coming. A lot of the clients coming from this business risk perspective, and our clients see the need that they also have to focus on the risk management perspective in their supply chains as well.
And maybe also here why we always focus on this risk part in the energy supply chain. You know that having an issue in your energy supply chain just has an straight effect. So we talk about blackouts, we talk about problems you really see in the second. That's why it's even more important in the energy sector to really understand what is going on into your supply chain, to be able to react quickly, to also set up, for example, mitigation strategies for scenarios that might happen and that not know yet, but so just to be prepared for the case, then that's very important too.
So actually you mentioned one of the main topics in supply chain, which is risk. So what is your approach to help companies to identify the risk in the first time?
I guess it's about questioning their suppliers and understanding what you're actually dealing with and what you're dependent on, to really understand your dependencies and having a plan B in case you need something. That is very, very important.
We have invented our own approach, and we are focusing with our clients on this approach. It's the so-called 6-step approach. And first we start with a health assessment, the so-called maturity assessment. And then we go into this risk perspective, where we look at the suppliers in place and the materials in place. And there we calculate risk scores with the data of our clients and with additional external data. And then we segment their suppliers. As we already discussed, there are clients with thousands of suppliers, and we build bundles with the suppliers with the most ESG risk, for example, or I as a client have the most risk of my EBITDA or of my margin at risk. And then we make bundles, and then we align measures, as Jenny already said, to those segments. And then our clients focus on these measures. And then it is not as time consuming as before, because what we today often see is that clients take the same measures for all of their suppliers. And it makes no sense, because not all of them are risky suppliers, of course.
In terms of barrier and in terms of enabler, so is the enabler for looking into the supply chain is regulation?
It's a part of it. Sometimes clients come to us because of regulatory pressure, honestly. Yeah, it's the case. But it's also that they see the risks out there. So especially in the energy sector, we see a lot of insolvencies of the suppliers. We see a lot of cyber risks. It's not only the material. Sometimes clients come to us because they have pressure from their investors or from their financial partners. Sometimes they are role models and they want to act environmental and socially friendly, of course. Yeah, it's a mixture of all. Yeah, but I think it's very important for companies to focus on supply chain risk management and to find out where your biggest risks sit. Because it could cost you a lot of money and lost sales, and you need to get those topics at the C-level agenda as well. So that's why scenario calculation is as important, as Jenny already mentioned.
And this is also why we always look beyond tier 1, because it very often happens that you actually don't know that maybe you think you have 5 suppliers for the same material, but you don't know that those 5 suppliers actually all buy from the same supplier. So if there's something happening, you are directly affected and you're not on the safe side just because you have 5. And this sometimes is really lacking in the mind of the companies. And this is also where we come back to the digitalization to really map everything beyond. And also where AI happens a lot, or I mean, just fast reaction. You can screen the news very quickly. That means if you have an issue in a factory somewhere where, okay, you're very dependent on that, you are able to just quickly switch suppliers if you're that far already in your supply chain. You can quickly act and say, okay, that's it. We don't deal with the supplier, for example, because there is child labor case, etc. And you can easily switch, and it doesn't take you long. You don't need to go through all the process and find new suppliers. It's just on a button. And this is why the most resilient supply chains are the ones that are digital and are thought through and mapped out until the last supplier.
So we talked about the enabler. What do you think are the barriers as well for this transformation?
It's the same as everywhere, because people think what we did the last years, and we did a good job, in a lot of ways, but we have to change, and sometimes we do not want to. And that's a barrier, and we have to bring those topics on the table. Maybe with this podcast today, it also helps. Yeah, honestly. What helps maybe within the organization is really to calculate your EBITDA, your margin is at risk, and tell your managers and tell your C-level what's at risk in your company. So,
yeah, especially in energy sector, which is super conservative and old sector with conservative mindsets. But maybe with renewables is different, but
especially
depends.
Renewables, because it is very often a big cost factor. Renewables are often a big investment at the beginning. And that's why it's sometimes a little bit more difficult. So cost is for sure a challenge.
Yeah. And you have single source dependencies, talking about rare earths, semiconductors, for example. And there you do not have more than 2 or 3 raw material supplier worldwide.
Yeah.
So
Chile copper.
Yes, exactly.
For example, So you have to think about how to collaborate with your suppliers as well. And I think this collaboration is also a really interesting topic. I was at a risk management summit 3 weeks ago, and there were procurement and supply chain professionals, and they were asked what's the most important thing today, and they said it's collaboration. They didn't say it's AI and the next tool, it's collaboration.
Well, and actually now that you are also a lecturer, you are making classes. So how do you see the new generation with this mindset of collaboration or using new tools? How do you see education in supply chain?
I think the students today are very well equipped, because when we go 10 years back or so, maybe those topics, as I mentioned in the beginning, this end-to-end supply chain perspective, the perspective which we are talking about, was not lectured then, but today they are fully aware of those topics, and they can connect them with risk management approaches and sustainability topics as well. For example, I am lecturing at the University of Applied Sciences, and for the course, I think it's called Industrial Circular Economy. And last semester, we did a really nice project with the students there. They looked at different supply chains. I think it was aluminum, we had steel, we had fashion as well. And they looked into the risks of the supply chain. And then they made a material flow analysis for Austria. Afterwards, they modeled business models for circularity. And they can really connect all those topics. And it was really amazing to work with them. Another example is we as inloop did an assignment for students at University of Economics and Business here in Vienna. And there's a course, it's called Sustainable Supply Chain Management. And the students worked on ESG supply chain health assessment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they prepared an online survey for us, and they did a really good job.
And also, Lydia, we at the Energy Bridge, we are very much focused about Central and Eastern Europe. And here we see there's a lot of manufacturing and industrial base, and which really needs to change their way super fast. Do you think it presents a lot of unique challenge and opportunity for their compared to other part of Europe, let's say?
Yeah, so let's say CEE is heavy manufacturing intensive, yeah, and so they use a lot of fossil fuels. There is a lot of emissions, but on the other hand, a lot of decarbonization potential as well. So yes, we should focus on the clean energy transition there, but maybe the financial perspective is a bit constrained.
It's also the opportunity for nearshoring.
Yeah,
for example.
of course, yeah.
So that we are not dependent anymore on a global scale to ship materials, production, etc. But it's an opportunity to just have it closer to us. That also eliminates risk.
And what supply chain differences that you see between this region and, let's say, compared to the Western European part?
No, just because it's easier, it's closer to Europe. If you have the materials in Europe, it's just way easier. And if you need to ship your chips around the whole planet until it arrives at your place, it's just way more of carbon footprint. It's way more of dependencies. You have way more risk. Might it be, for example, we had the case in the Suez Canal with the Evergreen. If there's something, your supply chain just disrupts. And the closer you have your materials and your production, the less risk you have along the way. And we have, for example, especially like wind turbines, etc. This is like very complicated transportation as well. The closer you have your things, the easier it gets. And the less dependent you are on certain regions.
For wind turbines, there is some concept. It's a road assessment. I don't know, because they have huge pails and sometimes the road is not
blocked,
big enough
or stable enough for this like heavy load. Yes, for example. So you really need to assess the transportation ways as well.
Yeah, that's a nightmare. Seeing the bright side of the moon, where do you see the quick wins when you make an assessment? Something that it's easy to do and it can help companies to first look upon, and it's cost effective, and it's like a quick win.
Yeah, quick wins, of course, is data. If you have your data available, you can start with a quick onboarding of your suppliers. You can shorten your payment cycles, for example, and you have less other errors. Then what I also would like to mention is inventory. Have the right inventory in place, the right safety stock. It can save a lot of working capital. And segmentation. Segmentation is also really a big topic we are focusing on when we're talking about risk management on the supplier side. But Jenny also does client segmentation for another of our clients, and it helps to focus on those segments. It's not as time consuming as before, and you have the right measures in place.
So what do you mean with segmentation? Just to...
Yeah, to segment your suppliers, for example, based on different criteria. For example, negotiation power, spend at your supplier, ESG risk, for example, scope 3 emissions. And you put the suppliers with the biggest scope 3 emission in one bundle. And there you have different measures for those segments, for those bundles. And there you focus on them. And together with our clients, we find out the right segmentation criteria on the one hand, and then we bundle them together, and then we align segments, measures to those segments.
Going into the future landscape now, why, especially in the energy sector where people already think that everything is, because it's renewable, it's getting everyone talks about energy transition. Why should we care about supply chain? Why is it more important for this sector?
Because, as we said, it's the backbone, and I really think from a European perspective, we should start stepping up a little bit. Especially in the energy sector, we are very dependent on certain things, and we should really use innovation and circularity to also just take a little bit more responsibility. If we, for example, talk about battery recycling, this is a great thing, but if we outsource it to countries where there are no labor rights, we kind of outsource again the responsibility. And it's really important that we understand that supply chain should not be linear. You should not take the raw materials and bring it to the end user, and then you just leave them and dispose them. I think it's really important to understand that in Europe, we need to build a circularity. We need to make use of innovation. Might it be, for example, also local battery recycling? There's, for example, battery recycling startup in Germany that's called Scilib. And they are really doing a good job. They're recycling up to 90% of the minerals. And we know that there's a labor law behind. And you know that the workers are protected. And I really think it's a very important factor, because we try to a little bit ignore that fact and just trying to minimize our own CO2 emission. So I think that's very important as well.
Yeah, this is something that we are also have talked in other episodes, that the concept of sustainability, it has to be also social.
Exactly.
It's one of the pillars. So that now that you mentioned
yes, exactly.
labor rights, is super important.
It's also the land use, it's water use, it's really what you do with everything around. Sustainability is way more than just clean energy in CO2 emission. I think this is really, really important. And this is where we need to step up a little bit.
And how do you see it's the European regulation in terms of the social part of the supply chain?
And maybe bringing the risk perspective here in as well. So if we are talking about sustainability, we are also talking about resilience. And there are a lot of risks in your supply chains on the social side and on the environmental side. And there are risks behind. And sometimes people say sustainability is too costly. But think about your risks and think about if you do not act. What does it cost you when you do not act?
Yeah.
Think about your reputational damage, for example. Think about lost sales, for example. We always say that there are no non-monetary risks. So sustainability is very important, and resilience is very important when talking about supply chains today.
Yeah, like in sustainability, there are three pillars: social, economical, and environmental. So there are economical costs, but there are also environmental costs and social costs.
Yeah.
We were very recently in Poland, in Gdansk, and critical infrastructure in Europe is the hot topic right now. Making it more sovereign and supply chain becomes a big part of it due to multiple factors that is going on in the world. How does make it less reactive and then more robust, going and more predictable using the methodology that you do?
I would go back here to the part of innovation as well. It's about mapping your entire supply chain. And if we talk about energy infrastructure, it really is about grid infrastructure. Where is what happening? And there are also ways you can map climate risk, for example, for infrastructure. For example, for floods or heat is also affecting the grid infrastructure very, very strongly. And this is also a point, as we also talked with, there's a software called Rethink, also a startup, female-led startup, I'm proud to say that. And they focus in on exactly this. You can map your entire network infrastructure, and you see where you, for example, have certain climate risks like flooding. You see also like biodiversity factors in there. You can really understand where you have issues. You also have, for example, array technologies where you have sensors on your grid, so you immediately know if there's an issue. So you can react way faster. And as we said, back to the scenario mapping and scenario planning, the more you prepare for the worst case, the easier you can switch. So for us, it's really important that you set up mitigation strategies. You need to know there's a plan B if something happens, and that you can really react faster. This is back from this firefighting to really being proactive. You need to be prepared for the cases. And that's where the digital supply chain also comes in.
I don't know if you followed, but in last days, there was the AI Impact Summit in India. Next year is going to be in Geneva in Switzerland. And there's a lot of disruption going on in consulting world as well because of that. But how do you see your role changing in that sense as well, as from traditional consulting to maybe implementer, or how do you see yourself?
Yeah, we help our clients to find the right tools, the right AI tools, or I don't know, IoT. That depends what's needed. But when talking about AI, surely was a topic at the summit. But when talking about AI, we also have to talk about the supply chain of AI and where do the rare earths, for example, for AI come from for those big data centers. We have to talk about water scarcity.
Yeah, it's well, we're going to have an entire session about data centers.
But yes, of course, our clients, they are working with AI. They are working with AI for forecasting or for risk detection, for example.
Connected is, I don't see our role as we are working changing so much, because it's really what I said before. What are we specialized on is really on this listening and helping in implementation. There's we really use the tools and are the sparring partner for the client. So I don't see the role per se changing.
Yeah, maybe you meant that consultants only give recommendations, but we see ourselves more as implementation partners. So, for example, a project we are working on is SNOP, and we did a health assessment for a client in the chemical sector there. And now we help them to implement this into their organizational setup. And afterwards, there will be a tool as well, and we will focus on the tool as well. So we go the long way with our clients. So we are not only consultants, we are more implementers, implementation partners.
Yeah. And with all the new technology that is on the table now, how do you see the future? Are we going to be able to have a real-time risk management, like second to second, or
it's already there?
It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, but you have to know where you would like to focus on.
Yeah,
That's the most important point. Yeah, because sometimes companies are overwhelmed by all those possibilities. And we also had the case that we worked on a project where the CEO said to us, now I have this risk detection platform in my company, and I need 10 more employees to work on all those topics that are provided by the platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
So always focus first, organizational setup, and then the tools. Yeah.
Changed. We now screen way more the market because there are a lot of solutions out there, and all of them are great, but all of them are special in something different. So for us, it's really also to understand, to meet with the companies, to meet with the founders, etc., and really understand what their added value is and where it can take place. And so for us, this is maybe just another task. We need to be aware of what is out there, because innovation somehow drives the future.
We getting to the last session of our conversation, and we call it more like a quick fire. So what capability do you think going ahead are going to be that is a must for people to have a resilient supply chain?
Easy answer. Focus on your supply chain risk management approach.
Yes, exactly this. Use digital tools, plan scenarios, and just be ready when it's necessary. And please just also think about your responsibility. I really think companies should take in their responsibility.
How would you invest 1 billion euros to improve supply chain in general, to make it more sustainable? How would you invest it?
We would love our clients to have that money to invest it. But it's not the everyday case. But maybe if you really have all those money, start investing in circular models. Okay. Yeah, to start with the design of your components and products, and there you will have the biggest impact in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, especially start investing into this secondary raw material market. I really think we should be able to use critical materials longer and more often, take more use out of it, and really extend the lifetime.
Yeah, and that also will increase material independency of Europe. Right?
Exactly.
Because you keep it here.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, good investment.
I believe you have to rely on a lot of framework, and you have to read a lot of books. If you have any book recommendation or a framework recommendation for making any kind of supply chain more robust, or in general as well, the book recommendation?
A framework. Maybe when we are talking about risk management, take a look at ISO 31000. It gives a very good understanding of business risks, and then you can widen your focus to supply chain risks as well. Take the global risk report of the World Economic Forum, for example. And if you have some time left, then maybe wait until the end of the year, because then our own book will be published on supply chain risk management.
Amazing.
And there we focus on AI and proper planning, and there are a lot of experts and co-editors in it.
Wow. Maybe we can make a launch for that book.
Yeah.
Right? Cool.
We love to do it.
Yeah, that'll be wonderful. So, are you the sole writer, or you're co-authoring it?
I'm the editor with a colleague from University of Business and Economics, and there are other co-editors as well.
Amazing.
On different topics. Yeah.
And you, Jenny, what is your recommendation?
Always talking about the same thing, but I really have to say, focus also on innovation, see what is out there, because I have the feeling if you screen innovation, you know where the pain points are and you know where the potential is. So for me, this is always the best book to read. Just really scrap the internet and figure what is out there.
Yeah, now we understand the importance of supply chain. Would you like to give some last statement or invitation for companies or the energy sector to look upon the supply chain?
Yeah, I would say look at your biggest single source dependency, and then think about what happens when it fails for 30 days.
And call me.
And then call me.
Yes, and I think it's about this fact of sustainability is not always costly. It's way more costly to ignore the sustainability aspect. This is a very important part. And also of being brave, really trying to do something that is new, trying to improve, trying to innovate. This, I think, is really, really a core message. We are living in a very conservative corporate world sometimes, and I think it's a little bit a moment to be brave.
It is.
On the brave note, thank you very much, Lydia, and thank you very much, Jenny, for coming and giving us a whole masterclass about
supply chain.
Thank you.
Yeah, and looking forward for the session that we're designing for the forum in June about supply chain in energy sector, looking upon a bit of batteries, a bit of supply for different products. So yeah, very looking forward for how it's going to be.
Yeah, we are too.
Thank you for coming.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks to the community for watching the episode until the end, and keep tuned for our next interview. Ciao, ciao, ciao.